What's up, everyone? This is your boy, the Big Ben Campus, back as always here with our continued breakdown of the 2017 college football season, conference by conference. We've completed a couple already. Big 12, American Athletic Conference, Big 10 yesterday with our friend Ryan. We've done a plethora of them. Now it's time to pump the brakes, move it back a little bit. And I was waiting to do the ACC with Ryan as well because, again, he's a bigger conference kind of. You would agree with that, Ryan. You're a big conference kind of guy. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, for sure.
So for me, I said to myself, we've done so many previews, you and I together. And again, if for anyone that doesn't know, Ryan and I, when I first started out my podcast, Ryan has been an integral part of being my co-host for a long time. We built up a good chemistry. We're actually friends, as I am with my friend Donnie Wrightside. But Ryan and I mean, we grew up together. Ryan, we went to high school together. We've been best friends. We've lived together. So we all know the story there. So I figure why not keep having you on to do these? You're a good college football mind and a conference today that I think we've talked about. I mean, Phil Steele says this is the best conference in America. I'm not sure about that, but there's a lot of intrigue about this conference because I know before we started doing the show here, you and I were looking at some of the win totals, and we were quite surprised at some of the numbers here. I'm excited to get into the ACC conference here. What are your overall thoughts before we get into this conference on the ACC?
Well, I mean, first you have to look at right away at the top of Florida State, kind of underachieving last year. They go out on a high note. They beat Michigan in their bowl game, but they return a lot. A lot of people, national people, are high on them, think that they're going to go to the national championship, go to the Final Four, and ultimately compete to win that. And then to me, I think the most interesting team, I think probably one of the top 2 or 3 most interesting teams in the country is Clemson. I mean, with the amount of talent that they lose, obviously they're like the heavyweights like Ohio State and Bama where they reload, they're recruiting at a high level. I get that. But, I mean, you cannot ignore the talent that they're losing with Deshaun Watson and Artavius Scott, Mike Williams, Wayne Gallman. I mean, the list goes on and on of talent that this team is, what are these new guys going to do? How well are they going to perform coming in? That to me is the most interesting thing in this conference is Clemson and what direction are they going to go? They're going to take a step back. Dabo Swinney's got to show us something. Can he continue to win after losing this kind of talent, or are they going to kind of be stagnant and lose 3-4 games?
Yeah, it's really the same, Ryan, comparison to Ohio State. I mean, they, again, lost a lot. I mean, didn't have the obvious, finish that Clemson did, but still similar. I mean, lost a lot on offense, lost some big names on defense. Obviously Ben Boulware, guys like that, guys that they're really, were long time a Clemson mainstay. So that's a good point by you. And then you look at the rest of this conference, which we're going to get into right now. We'll start with Boston College. And what we do, short 2-3 minute breakdown. We'll give you the win total. And I got to be honest, Ryan, there are a lot of win totals in this conference that I'm interested in. And I know you mentioned as well, you're interested as well. Let's get into it. Boston College, a team under Steve Adazio that has really kind of been the same team for as long as I can remember. They're a smash mouth, boring football team. They love to run the football, play great defense. But you look at last year, I mean, very good run defense, very good pass defense. Really a team, Ryan, that if you sit and watch, you'd probably fall asleep. They're not an interesting football team. Last year with Patrick Towles, they were just kind of a wonky team, really just nothing to get excited about. And they're the same team year after year. You look at this win total at what do we have, 4, I believe. Look, I think one thing about them we have to point out is they do have a pretty good run game, and I think they will have a pretty good run game. Good offensive line, good running back in John Hillman. And the question, 2 questions for them. Can they continue to have that good run defense? They had the best run defense last year in the ACC. And who's their quarterback? Is it Anthony Brown? Is it Darius Wade? Who is it? I'm going to tell you right now, Ryan, one thing I do think will happen is they're going to be a little bit more up-tempo. So I think those normal, if we remember, Ryan, they're in the 40s a lot of the time with their totals. I think it's going to be hard to maintain that this year. I think they're going to be a little bit more up-tempo, and I think you might have a little bit more value betting on overs this year with Boston College. I don't think they're going to be exactly that, waste clock, run the football. Because if you look at these 2 quarterbacks, both these guys like to run with the football. I think one thing about them that I am certain with is I think over is going to be a little bit more profitable with them this year because you're going to get such low totals. At a win total of 4, I mean, you really, when you're looking at that, you want to look at the out-of-conference schedule and ask yourself, can they win those games? Because, look, they're not very good. They're not going to win a lot of games in this conference. They should beat Northern Illinois right out of the gate. Wake is a tough game. They're a lot better. Notre Dame they won't beat. They're going to go to Clemson. One of their out-of-conference, Central Michigan, that's probably a win there. I would think they can beat Connecticut, Virginia. It's going to be right around the number. I would be inclined to go over. I think they're a 5-win team at most. They did get to a bowl game last year and were able to win that game against Maryland in a pretty good game. They did almost blow that, though. What are your thoughts on BC, Ryan? Can't be too high, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, they're probably you have to think over in the Atlantic Division that they're probably the worst team. I mean, right there, kind of battling with Syracuse. But yeah, I mean, you know, a team that year now you kind of have to wonder what their quarterback situation is like. That's never something to kind of get excited about. That's gonna have to be kind of worrisome. I mean, they do have one of the better defensive players along the defensive line there with Harold Landry, the defensive lineman there. He might compete for a Defensive Player of the Year award. But, I mean, he's a defensive lineman. It would have been better if you're saying they have one of like the better quarterbacks in the conference to kind of get excited about. But, yeah, BC, they're going to kind of, just like you said, they're going to try to play good defense, try to keep games close and find a way to win. Unfortunately, the offense lacks the firepower and lacks the kind of playmakers side of the ball to really kind of get to the 6-7 win mark. Yeah, I pegged them as like a 4 or 5 win team. You know, up tempo might help them a little bit this year, Jeff. But again, the schedule favor playing in this tough of a conference going to be tough.
Here's one problem though you have with a new team running this kind of new wave of offense. They've built their brand at Boston College on defense. You have a football team on offense that can't run that up-tempo offense. What happens, Ryan? We saw it with the Philadelphia Eagles in the Chip Kelly era. It wears your defense down, makes your once really good defenders that, when they're healthy and not tired, play well. Look, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Darius Wade and Anthony Brown can't throw the football particularly well. I think they're going to have issues with the passing game as they did last year. I mean, this team was 120th in the country in passing yards per game. That's 8 from the bottom, Ryan. That's not good. I don't know that's going to get much better. They could get bogged down offensively if that up-tempo offense is not working. There's some good defense in this conference. It's just going to be really tough. And, again, they're not a team that's going to threaten anyone. So, for me, I have no interest in betting anything as far as BC win totals. If I had to, I would go over. I just think they're a 5-win team, and that's about it. Ryan, the next team, and we again do go alphabetical order here, Clemson, which you talked about before the show or during the show before we get into the breakdown of what they're going to be. Obviously, off the amazing season last year, they win the national championship, but they lose so much. They lose Deshaun Watson. They lose those big-time receivers, Mike Williams, Artavius Scott, the running back Wayne Gallman, the Ben Bullwares on defense, those kind of guys. And, obviously we know Dabo Swinney is going to be able to recruit. They're going to be able to get those big chip talents. And look, you look at these receivers, Deion Kane, Raymond McLeod, Hunter Renfrow is very good in the last couple games of the season. But again, who's the quarterback? What do you have on defense? Christian Wilkins is going to be a great player. Dexter Lawrence is going to be a great player. But what do you have now? Win total is, I believe, where are we at? 9, I think. I don't have, I got to get that. That's the one I didn't get, obviously. But, Ryan, tell me what you're thinking. Is it just we're going to wait and see with Clemson? Obviously, we all know. I mean, if you follow sports, it's very tough to repeat unless you're the New England Patriots, Ryan. I mean, look, we see it in other sports. Baseball, the Cubs are struggling this year. You see it in other sports. It's very difficult unless you're Alabama or the Patriots go back-to-back. It's hard to imagine this year that they get anywhere near that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I'm not looking. I'm not looking to put a future on this team to get to the college football playoff. Or I mean, I wouldn't even put a future in for them to win their conference. I don't see it. I mean, last year, so much of the success with Clemson was driven on revenge, and a lot of the
Right.
nucleus of
Good
those
point.
players lost the year before against Alabama, and they were really driven to get back there and were determined to get over that hump and win the national championship, which they ultimately did. This year, you flip the script and it's kind of a younger team. The offense is going to take a step back. That's just being a realist. The offense will take a step back this year. Defense should probably be a top 10, top 15 unit again. I think. I mean, they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball to not get the job done. But offensively, like, what are you going to get out of their quarterback position? I mean, Kelly Bryant, he's the guy right now going into the season. Will Hunter Johnson, the freshman, kind of push him as we get into the season and kind of be on his heels a little bit? So what are you going to get there? Clemson, they're like 9 wins to me is kind of their is right at their ceiling. I mean, maybe you catch a break and win a 10th, because I mean, Florida State does come to Clemson, which helps. But yeah, not 9 wins to me is where I see Clemson at. I think 9 wins. I think they slip up and win, or excuse me, I think they lose 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their win total, 9.5. I would be inclined to go under as well. I think they're a 9-win football team. I think that's a great point you make about that revenge angle. You've won it, okay? You've had that lure. A lot of your guys have moved on. Pretty tough schedule. I mean, early on, I mean, Auburn's going to be a tough game out of conference. You do have some games at home. I mean, you have Florida State at home, which is great. But again, you look at these odds.
They're going to lose that first game. Mark my words. They're going to lose Auburn. They're going to lose to Auburn. I truly believe that. And if you're out there and you can get in an early line or something like that, I would do it. I love Auburn in that football game.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think if you like Auburn, then you would probably be more inclined to take their odds as opposed to Clemson. I mean, to win the national championship, Clemson at 32-1. So not great as far as no one really regards this team as a team to repeat. I mean, if I'm going to take an odds that high, I'm going to look to Texas. I'm going to look to an Auburn. Clemson just doesn't do much for me, especially off of last year. I just, I don't see them getting anywhere near that. Maybe to get, maybe to win this conference at 4.5-1, but I'm just not really interested in them this year. I don't, if I had to take their win total, I'd go under 9.5. I just think after last year, it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb, and they're going to be good. I mean, they're never going to be bad. It's just, again, I mean, we have to remember last year, they are another team that had some very close calls, Ryan. If we remember early in the season, NC State, they had issues with Troy, Ryan, if we can be fruitfully honest here. It was Troy, I believe, wasn't it? Yeah. Remember, Ryan? Troy?
Say that again, Joe.
Early in the season, I mean, you had trouble with Auburn, Troy, NC State. You ended up winning that game, but you should have lost. You lost to Pittsburgh. They just really caught fire at the end of the season and kind of went on one of those runs, but I don't think they're going to get as lucky this year. Ryan, we're going to skip.
Yeah, that's a great point you make too. They did escape a lot last year.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I'm definitely pretty down on Clemson. If I had to go, I'd go under 9.5 wins. And I agree. I think they will lose that game against Auburn on September 9th. Ryan, we're going to skip Florida State. We'll come back to them at the end. Let's go to Louisville, and a team that, look, they lost their final 3 games of the season, got crushed in their bowl game against LSU 29-9, which I think we were all pretty surprised by, Ryan. I didn't think they would continue to do exactly what they were doing offensively. And again, the season really kind of changed when you lost to Clemson. We remember what they did to Florida State, but I think we can agree, Ryan, Florida State last year was very disappointing. And again, this year kind of remind you of the team that maybe will bounce back, but they got crushed in their bowl game. It's hard to imagine, as good as Lamar Jackson was last year, can he duplicate that this year? Probably can. And early on, he's going to really put up some big video game numbers again, because you get Purdue, you get North Carolina right out of the gate. He'll probably throw for 700 yards combined in those games and have 7-8 touchdowns by the end of it. But then you get Clemson, third game out of the season. You're going to figure out right away, Ryan, who's for real in this conference. I don't think it's going to be Louisville. I don't think they're going to do anywhere near. Again, they're probably what they were last year. A 9-win team. You host go to a bowl game, a Citrus Bowl, an Alamo Bowl, something like that, and you challenge. They're a good team. They're nowhere near a great team, though.
Completely agree. And Jeff, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you said it perfectly. I think this is the same exact team that we saw last year. I think this is going to be a 3-loss team again. I think this is going to be a team that goes 9-3. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, with as great as Lamar Jackson was last year, and he delivered some great performances. Don't get me wrong. My biggest concern was this is an offensive line last year that surrendered 47 sacks. And that offensive line remains a concern. I mean, yeah, they return a decent amount, but I mean, how much are they going to improve? I mean, and they're going to have to improve a lot against teams like Florida State. So for me, the offensive line is such a concern, and you lose your mainstay of skill position players, at running back and at wide receiver. So how are the young guys going to come in and step up and support Lamar Jackson? Because he's going to need help. I mean, last year he had to do it pretty much all by himself. So for me, that's the biggest concern for Louisville is how much help is he going to get, and how much help is he going to get from his offensive line? Because to me, that's where it's all going to kind of stand. And another thing I'll point out, Jeff, with Louisville, that if they don't get it squared away, they're going to be in the same boat as they were last year, is the turnover margin. This team ranked 107th nationally in turnover margin. I believe they were -7 or 8 collectively in the turnover margin. If that doesn't get turned around, it's going to be the same thing again for them. So Lamar Jackson, great player, obviously a Heisman Trophy winner, but to me, it's just not enough there in kind of a difficult conference.
Yeah, I think you could arguably say, Ryan, they're going to be worse than they were last year. For one, teams have a whole year of tape on Lamar Jackson, and two, this team had 22 fumbles lost last year. That's too many. You make a great point about turnover margin. They were 107th in the country last year in that cohort. So, you look at, Ryan, all the good teams that we've talked about last night, today, we will talk about. One of the common themes with all of them was they were very good with turnover margin. You have to force turnovers as a defense. You have to put your offense in good positions. If you're not forcing those turnovers – and, Ryan, look, let's be really honest, because I'm honest. We all know that if you follow me. Other than Florida State, what did this team actually do last year as far as wins? Who did they really beat?
Exactly.
I mean, let's be real.
Exactly.
I mean, and let's be honest also, you put up 63 points against Florida State, you're probably not going to do that very often. It was just their day. But not a lot on this schedule to be that excited with. And I got to tell you, I mean, Clemson, I think they're going to lose there. They're not going to go to Florida State and win. And other than that, what do you have on this schedule? I mean, Murray State, Kentucky, Syracuse. I mean, just a lot of junk. I mean, the bottom feeders of this conference. You don't play Miami. You don't play some of the up-and-coming teams. Where's Georgia Tech on the schedule? They just don't play anyone. And, again, you're not going to beat Clemson or Florida State. So, while they'll win 9 games probably, I'm not really high on them. I don't think they're going to do much of anything. They're not a team to worry about. NC State is back, Ryan, and I'm surprised that Dave Duren, there were thoughts of him maybe being let go, but he won 3 of 4. They got into the Independence Bowl and won that game fairly convincingly. But there's some questions here. I mean, I love Jalen Samuels. I like what Ryan Finley's done, the kid out of Boise State. And Duren is kind of a beleaguered figure in Wolfpack country, but I think they're going to be able to score the football. The question is, can they maintain that defense they had last year? I thought they were very surprising defensively last year. I remember in 2015, they had some problems on the defensive end, but 27th last year in total defense, pretty impressive. Great rush defense, 8th in the country, and they maintained that is the big question. And you would think they would. I mean, you look at Bradley Chubb's back, Justin Jones is back. You look at this defensive line, Ryan, you got to be pretty impressed. 4 seniors. I got to tell you, I think NC State's going to be a pretty decent team this year. I think they have 8 or 9 wins. This is a tough schedule, though. But you look at early on. I mean, really should start the season 3-0. Do have a game at South Carolina, a neutral site game, but it is in North Carolina. Then they get Marshall and Furman. Got to go to Florida State, which is a loss. but then you get Syracuse, you get Boston College, you get Wake. But they have some tough games in the schedule. I'm pretty high on them, though. I think their defense is going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be tough to run on this team. They can just make that pass defense work for them. I think they're going to be a scrappy team. They're going to be a team, I think, that's going to cover some big numbers. What do you have on NC State?
Yeah, I like NC State too, man. I'll tell you, this is a team, and particularly because they have three staples that you look for when you're breaking down a football team, whether it's the NFL or college. They have good offensive line, they have a good defensive line, and they have a stable quarterback position, like you mentioned with Ryan Finley. So those three things alone, I believe, are going to keep them in ball games and allow them to, like you said, compete for 8 or 9 wins. And let's not forget the three toughest games that they have: Florida State, Louisville, and Clemson. Louisville and Clemson come to Raleigh. They only have to go to Florida State, which, I mean, I think they'd lose that Florida State game either way, wherever it was played. And then they get Clemson in revenge. Let's not forget, they probably should have beat Clemson in Death Valley last year. So, I mean, they're going to be really motivated for that game, really motivated for that one. A game that I think that they get a couple breaks and they can kind of carry the emotion that they can knock off Clemson because, like we said, not too terribly high on them. So, yeah, I like North Carolina State this year. And their head coach, a lot of people are saying, are kind of in the hot seat this year. So if he can have a nice 8-9 win season, he'll probably save his job. So I like NC State this year, man. Very, very solid team. Very solid team going forward.
22 starters back for this team. And I got to tell you, listen, if Dave Doran can't win with this team, I think he's gone. This is probably the best team they've had. And, you know, a lot of people made good points with this group in saying that you look at last year, this team really had a tough season. I mean, they had a lot of almost. It was almost beat Clemson, almost beat Florida State. You look at against Clemson, Ryan, lose by 7 in overtime. Florida State lose by 4. So they're right in these games. And I think this year, I think the ball's going to bounce a little bit better. This is a team, NC State, that I think a lot of people should get to know a little bit. They're going to be a very tough out in the ACC, especially with an experienced team. Like I said, 22 players back and with a little bit of motivation here. You know, the coaches, look, again, if he doesn't win with this team, I think he's gone. He's good as gone. And look, I mean, the schedule's tough, but if they navigate it, I definitely think they're a 8-9 win football team. So, yeah, I would go over 7.5. And I'm actually, from an ATS perspective, definitely going to include them in a lot of my plays this year. I'm looking forward to NC State football almost again. As far as and Ryan, would it be crazy to say that they're top 5 in this league? I mean, I think, you know, obviously we would put, you know, Florida State up there, Clemson, Miami. But I think are they not as good as Louisville? I mean, why are they not as good as Louisville?
No, I completely agree. And like I said, I think, you know, with the fact that Louisville has to go to NC State, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's definitely a game that they can win. And I think Clemson coming to NC State's a game they can win as well for the motivational factor there. But yeah, I mean, you look at the top 3 teams, people will say Florida State, Clemson, Louisville. And then you look at the Coastal Division with the top 2 teams being Miami and Virginia Tech. I don't think NC State's that much different than Miami and Virginia Tech. I don't think the gap is that, you know, that crazy. I don't think the gap's that big, really. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, man, I like NC State. NC State reminds me of kind of Northwestern this year in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
that's what I kind of relate them to.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of seniors back, good quarterback. Yeah, I'm excited about Wolfpack football. Syracuse is our next team, Ryan, and another team last year with a lot of almost. I mean, they really should have went bowling. It's a shame that Eric Dungy got injured late in the year because they were cruising. Then they lose their final 4 games, and they were ugly, particularly on the defensive end. You look at the final 2 games of the season, this team gave up 120 points, give or take, 76 and 45. I mean, that's amazing. Right? I mean, 76 points you gave up. I mean, the basketball team didn't give up 76 points that day. It just disgraceful defensive performance late in the game. late in the year. And you look at all the ranks. I mean, I don't know that they're going to be much better on that side of the football this year. I think they are what they are. Dino Babers, that hurry up offense. If Eric Dungey can stay healthy, again, I think what they were last year. I don't think I think they'll be one win better probably, and I think at 5.5, I think that's way too conservative for this team. I mean, with Eric Dungey, they won with injured and losing the final 4 games. They still won 5 games. I mean, with Eric Dungey, if he could stay healthy, I think this win total will win. I mean, 6 or 7 wins is not out of the question, especially with the first 3 games of the season. I mean, Central Connecticut State's a guarantee. Central Michigan's a guarantee. Um, Boston College late in the year, they should win. Pittsburgh is up and coming, but I don't think very good. Wake, they could probably beat. It is a tough schedule, I will say that, but you would have to think at 5 wins last year, they should be able to get one more and go bowling this year, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely close. I mean, they're going to be right there. It's going to be like a 5 or 6 win team. So, yeah, for me, not a team I like. I'm very intrigued by. Dungy's a fun player to watch, especially with the up tempo offense that Babers runs there. I mean, they were exciting to watch at times last year, kind of before he got hurt and whatnot. But yeah, defensively is where this group has to improve. Let's see how much they would improve going into this year, and can they kind of keep the offense in some more games and be able to get them over that win total. I'm not so sure, man. I'm not as high on them as maybe you are. 5, it's close. I mean, you have to ask yourself, with the number being 5.5, are they more inclined to get to 6? I kind of want to say yes, just for the fact that the schedule is very, very easy, and if they start out 3-0, I mean, you'll have to find 3 more wins in the rest of that schedule, which I think is possible.
The problem, though, Ryan, that you make there is I don't think they're going to beat Middle Tennessee State. And by the way, I think that total will be in the 80s. I mean, there's going to be a lot of offense in that game. But I got to tell you, they got to find a way to run the football. I mean, they were not good last year. You look at how good they were, Ryan, 11th in the country in passing offense, yet they finished 90th in total offense because they could not run the football. They have to run the football. Mackenzie Pierre should be that guy. Ran for 2,500 yards in his high school senior season. Again, it's high school, but it's nice to see Dino Babers maybe trying to switch it up a little bit and run the football. Ryan, we saw Washington State last year really switch up what they did offensively. It wasn't just throwing the football 90% of the time. They mixed in some run plays that really worked. Dino Babers has to find a way to get some yards on first down and kind of take a little bit of pressure off Dungey, because you mentioned those first 3 games of the season, but I got to tell you, I mean, that final 8-9 games is tough. I mean, you got to go to NC State, to Miami, to Florida State, to LSU. That's a tough schedule there as far as that conference game. I think as I kind of look at this schedule, it's hard to imagine they get to 6 wins, I guess. If you look at kind of the particulars here, that's a tough schedule. I mean, they're going to have to find a way to beat an NC State or Louisville. I think to go bowling. I think this is a sharp number as I look at it from the books. I mean, 5.5 is a good point by you. They're going to have to get to 6. They're going to have to eclipse what they did last year. The problem is their schedule is pretty tough. So for me, I'm just going to kind of stay away from them as I kind of look more into it. Wake Forest Ryan's next. The Demon Deacons, who look, Dave Clawson's done a very good job with this group. I think, if we remember Ryan a couple years ago, this team was, a 3-win team. I mean, they weren't very good. But you look at this year, 13 starters back, a lot of guys back. Kendall Hinton's back, a guy that kind of a dual threat quarterback, did some good things last year. They have a good backup in John Wolford, who I think they kind of decided we're going to run this triple, the option kind of run. And look, I mean, I was surprised at how they played in their bowl game against Temple, winning that game. And they go down early in that game. It didn't look good, but they fought, played great defense, and really came back with it. Question I have, though, will their defense miss a beat after switching defensive coordinators. That's kind of the big question there. But I'm decently high on them. Their win total is at 5.5, and another team here that you look at last year, they were 6-6. Can they get 6 wins? Let's quickly look at it. Presbyterian, they'll win. Boston College, I think they'll win. Utah State, think they can win that game. At Appalachian State, always a tough game in Boone. I'm going to mark that a loss. I think App State's going to be pretty good, 3-1. But then they get Florida State, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Notre Dame, Syracuse, NC State, Duke. Again, I think a pretty sharp number here. I think they're a 5-6 win team. I'm not really looking to coin flip on futures or win totals. So for me, I don't see a distinctive advantage here in putting my money into the hands of a team that might win 5, might win 6 games. I like what Clausen's done here, but just not enough value for me to really get involved for a year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, their schedule's tough, and that's kind of the great equalizer when you're looking at the total there, the win total. I mean, they have to. I mean, really, look at their schedule, man. I mean, tough schedule. You got to face Clemson. You got to play Florida State. You got to play Louisville. You got to play at Notre Dame. You got to play NC State, who we just talked about, who are high on. I mean, this is not a very friendly schedule. I mean, really. And then, at App State, who knows what can happen down there in Boone. We always talk about that's a tough place to play. So yeah, Wake, I'm not real high on, and I'm not very high on that total there at all. So definitely staying away from them. Absolutely, Jeff.
I got to be honest. I think their ceiling's 5 wins, and that's if they can beat Appalachian State. If they beat Appalachian State, okay, I think they'll beat Duke at the end of the year. I think the game for me on if they'll clinch this is, can they go on the road and beat Syracuse or Georgia Tech? If they can do that, they'll hit this win total. But again, we have to remember with win totals, you can get a little greedy with them. I think we look at them and say, well, it's pretty low risk. But again, you have to remember, you're tying your money up for a long time. You don't want to invest in things that you may or may not win. You want to look at these as almost – at the end of the season, when I bet, let's say I bet 20 futures, I'm going to look to win 15 of them. You have to do that because you're going to need to make a profit. You've sat your money there for a whole year, Ryan. You have to have some sort of reason to continue to do that. And look, with 128 teams, it's hard to look at Wake Forest and say, I have to bet that. I have to. Just not interested. Duke is the next team, and I got to be honest, I think this is an under that I'm going to definitely be interested in. This is not one of David Cutcliffe's better teams. I think Daniel Jones will be better. I think he'll be a guy that will mature and become their guy. But I don't think this defense is going to be anywhere near what they once were with Breon Borders and Jeremy Cash. Ron, you remember that defense? Last year they were average. They were worse than average. They were 66th in total defense. This team couldn't score. They couldn't throw the football. They were a decent run offense, but Daniel Jones is like, some of these BC quarterbacks and others, has to find a way to complete some passes and throw the football a little bit. This schedule is early on very tough. I mean, NC Central, okay, you win that one, but then you get Northwestern, you get Baylor. Baylor's a better team than they are. I think they could beat North Carolina. That's a game winnable. There's 2. They'll beat Virginia. That's 3. But they're not going to beat Miami, Florida State, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech. I think the game for me is going to be Army. They'll win. If they can beat Georgia Tech or Wake in the final game, they'll get close. But I got to be honest, I think they're a 4 or 5 win team. I don't think there's any way Duke wins 6 games. It goes bowling. This would be one that I'd be a little bit more inclined to bet. But again, another one that you don't really have a huge margin for error here. I think Sean Wilson could carry this team, get them some scores, but this is a tough schedule. When you're facing, Ron, week after week, some of these bottom feeder teams, you're facing Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, week after week. Another team that I just don't see winning 6 games.
Jeff, the Duke fun is officially over. I mean, it was fun while it lasted, and we made some money off of them. A lot of people made some money off of them, but it's back to the shadows for Duke. I mean, really, let's just say what it is. I mean, they had a nice run. They won some football games. They got to a nice little bowl game, and that was fun for them. I mean, I'm sure it was fun for the university, fun for the fans, but those days are behind us. It's back to 3-4 win seasons for Duke, and I think they get to like 4. I think that's my number for Duke. I mean, you just broke down their schedule. I see 4 wins in there at most. I mean, I don't even think they could sneak in a 5th win there. I just don't think they're capable of pulling off an upset over a team like Baylor who comes to town or Northwestern who comes to town early. I just don't see it happening. So yeah, for me, man, I have to just being a basketball school now. I mean, I really believe that, and I think that's going to be kind of the trend going forward. Is just Duke's going to be back to being a laughingstock with football. And it was fun while it lasted, but that's what I see happening again, Jeff.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't mean to be rude to Duke fans or backers or whatever, or whoever you are, but I got to be honest. I think they were extremely lucky to win 4 games last year. I mean, look, luckily they played Army in a fucking swamp. It was raining heavily during a hurricane. I remember because I had Army in that game, and it was a real shit show. So I think they were lucky to win that game. They will not beat Army this year. I'm going to tell you right now. Army is going to be another good football team, Ryan. I think they have the ability to go back-to-back in bowl games, something you haven't done in a long time. That's a tough game. And let's be real. I mean, they beat Notre Dame, which I think we were all floored by. Notre Dame had some questionable losses last year. I think if that happened again, it wouldn't happen. And they beat North Carolina by 1. Okay, again, I think if they play that game over, they lose. So you can make the case this team should have been a 1-win team last year. I don't think you get anywhere near 5.5 wins. I think you're totally right. I think this is a 3-win team at best, and their out-of-conference schedule is pretty tough. I mean, Northwestern is, we've talked about, very good. Baylor's going to be better than them. I got to be honest. I get a weird feeling they lose to like some NC Central or something. Who the hell knows? I think Duke's going to be really bad. I'm not going to call it, but I think you're dead right. The fun is over in Blue Devil country. Root for their basketball team. That's probably a better idea. Georgia Tech is next, Ryan, and a team that I never get really that interested in. I mean, I don't know. There's something about – I'm not a big – unless it's a military school, I'm not huge into the to that offense. You know, I like obviously watching it, and it's fun, but leave it to the military schools, which we all know our friend Paul Johnson is a former Navy coach. And look, I mean, 9-4 last year, I think was very overachieving. The run game is obviously going to be potent. You look at their offensive line, it should be very good. I mean, pretty good up front. Matthew Jordan, can he stay healthy? He's the guy that should win this job here. I don't know. I mean, their secondary is going to be good, I think, as far as, you know, can they stop some of these higher-powered offenses? Ryan, the problem with them is their run defense is not very good. They gave up 172 yards a game. They only had 18 sacks last year, which is, compared to some of these other defensive lines, horrible. They have to figure out how to get some pressure on the quarterback, or Lamar Jackson and you know, some of these guys are really going to run all over this team. They have to figure out a way to stop the run, because as we know in the ACC, a lot of good running backs in this conference. Win total is at 6.5, so you're basically hoping that they get to that 7-8 win plateau. And look, you get Tennessee right out of the gate. You got to go to a better Central Florida team. I think they lose both those games, to be honest with you. Jacksonville State you'll beat. You'll beat Pittsburgh, I would imagine. North Carolina is going to be bad. That's 3. At Miami, that's a loss. They'll beat Wake. That's 4. They'll beat Duke, 5. You get a game at the end of the season against Virginia or against Georgia. Ryan, I think 6.5 is a little probably about right. I think they're a 6-win team. Another one that I think is sharp. A lot of very sharp numbers this year. I think as you kind of look at this conference, Georgia Tech, another team, just doesn't do that much for me.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do much for me either, to be honest with you. I mean, really, the same old story with them. They had a nice year a couple years ago when they got to a BCS bowl game, which was a fun story for them. But yeah, look, I think I mean, they do have a tough schedule. I mean, you just ran through it. I mean, to have to face Georgia and Tennessee in out of conference games is tough. I mean, to take on two SEC teams, I mean, that's going to be tough. And then have Clemson in there, and so I mean, I think 6 is the ceiling for them. Really, I think they're more likely to win 6 than they are to win 7. So yeah, I'll definitely go under there. I mean, just it's the same old story with them. I just feel like they're just always like average every year. They're always just kind of right around 6, 7 wins, and they don't ever kind of get anything more than that. So I mean, I think Dedrick Mills will be a nice little story this year at running back. I think he's a name to watch if he can kind of catch fire. Maybe they can kind of sneak out a win in there somewhere. But yeah, I just don't see it. Georgia Tech. Blase again. For me.
And I think we also have to point out, Ryan, which I think we kind of took him for granted a little bit, but Justin Thomas was a very good quarterback for a lot of years for this team. 3 years, really durable guy for the most part, ran this offense pretty well. Totally new quarterback now. And that's going to be something that I think they're going to have to get familiar with. But, not an off, especially if you get an offense like this and you start to really kind of know how to play it, you'll be fine. But yeah, again, Dedrick Mills is a good name, good guy. I think him and Jalen Samuels from NC State are going to have some breakout years probably. But tough schedule. I think they're a 6, 7-win team. So, again, not a ton of value for me. I think this line is probably right where it should be. Miami is next, Ryan. And I'm not particularly that high on Miami. I think a lot of people are. And look, if Brad Kaya stays, I think they're a national title contender possibly because defensively they're really good. They're going to be very good. And if we saw anything last year that we know about Miami, they're an elite defensive side. The question I have is another team that lost a decent amount last year. I mean, you lose, obviously your quarterback, Brad Kyle. You bring in or Malik Rozier comes in and replaces him. A big drop-off there. You lost your great tight end, David Njoku, who was one of the better tight ends in the country last year. Really did some good things for them. And they've been a great defense. The problem is I lump them kind of into the second tier of talent here. I really do. I don't think they're as good as Florida State or even Clemson. I think they're kind of in that NC State, Louisville kind of mark. I mean, you look at the first couple games here. The win total is at what do we have here? I believe it's 9, if I'm correct. First couple games, 2 easy ones: Bethune-Cookman, Arkansas State. But then you get Florida State right out of the gate, and right away. Look, if they can figure out a way to win that game, then obviously they're going to have a special season. But I just don't think early on they're going to come right into the season with a new quarterback. Mark Walton will be very good, I think, for this team, and their defense will pick up the slack. But I'm not too high on Rozier. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the defense and the running game is going to have to carry Miami this year. I mean, really, with the talent that they return on the defensive side of the ball, and then the talent that they lose offensively, with Njoku, and then of course with Kaya. They're going to have to rely on Mark Walton a lot. And I think if Mark Richt was smart, which is he or isn't he? I mean, that's kind of up for debate. It's kind of up for debate every year, it seems like. But he needs to feed Walton and let kind of, the quarterback position kind of unravel and kind of try to get some traction as you go into week 3 at Florida State. A game that I just don't think – and it's a night game. I mean, it's already established. It's an 8 o'clock game. It's on ABC. Early. I mean, if that game was later in the year, like week 6, week 7, you at least get the quarterback position kind of stable at that point. Maybe they have a shot, but they don't have a shot at that game as it stands right now. They have to face a tough Toledo team. Jeff, you like that conference, and I think Toledo is going to be one of the better in that conference this year. That's going to be a tough ball game. But other than that, I mean, really, they get Notre Dame at home. So, quarterback position's the question mark. What are they going to get there? If they get good play, they'll definitely compete. If that's kind of a struggle, that doesn't bode well for. So for me, I'm more inclined to kind of side with you in the fact that not sure why people are so high on Miami because of the uncertainty at the quarterback position. To put my eggs in a basket on a team that has unsure quarterback play.
Agreed. And that's going to be kind of the growing theme in the Coastal this year. You have a new quarterback at UNC, new quarterback at Miami, new quarterback at Vatech. You have a new quarterback at Pittsburgh, new quarterback at Georgia Tech, new quarterback at Duke. Basically.
Everywhere.
A lot of new quarterbacks, Ryan, in this conference, this side of the conference. All I know is I don't think they're going to beat Florida State, so I don't think it really matters too much. But this is a real toss-up. Who you think can win this conference? I'd be inclined to go with Miami on this side of the conference just because I think defensively they're better than everyone else. But as far as would I be surprised if they lose? No, because Virginia Tech brings back, a lot of good players. Trayvon McMillan, Cam Phillips, bring back some options, which we'll get to. North Carolina Ryan's next, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am really low on this team. I think they're going to have some real problems this year. And I think at 7, I think that win total's, to me, kind of laughable. Really. Look, I think we can point out, Larry Fedora is a good offensive coach. I did some good things with Mitchell Trubisky, but I got to be honest, I don't think he's going to mold Brandon Harris into some elite quarterback in a matter of months. And let's be real. Gene Chizik had a nice year to start, but he was battered and bruised in his first year in that bowl game against Baylor, and they've never really recovered from that as a group. They were horrible last year against the run, giving up 227 yards a game. I don't think it's going to be much better this year. Plus, Ryan, they literally lost everyone on offense. Trubisky, Elijah Hood, TJ Logan, Ryan Switzer, Matt Collins, everyone that you know from UNC is gone. And look, this schedule early on, Louisville is tough right out of the gate. I'm going to tell you right now, going to Old Dominion, not going to be an easy game for UNC. Old Dominion under that coach is going to be a tough game. Old Dominion is really an up-and-coming program. They had a good bowl win last year, really starting to feel themselves a little bit, and they're going to be just as good this year. Going to Old Dominion is a tough football game. I'm going to tell you right now. They get Notre Dame on the schedule, got to go to Georgia Tech, got NC State on the road at Virginia Tech, got Miami thrown in there. I don't think they get anywhere near 7 wins. I think they're a 4 or 5 win team at most. I think they're going to have a lot of growing pains, Ryan, and I think we're really going to see. Look, if Fedora coaches up Harris and they're any good, I'll say, congratulations. But I don't know that I see it. I guess Austin Prohl is something to look forward to a little bit and everything. But look, they got rid of Chizik and moved on. I just don't know if there's going to be much change in this defense. I'm not high on UNC. I think 7 is way too high.
Yeah, they're definitely they lost a lot, man. You talked about it, the amount of talent that they lost. And this isn't like it's, Florida State or it's Ohio State or it's Michigan or it's one of those type of teams losing the amount of talent, but they're bringing a lot of talent back in. And UNC doesn't have that luxury to say that. They're going to rely on a lot of transfers. They're going to rely on Brandon Harris from LSU. They're going to rely on Stanton Truitt from Auburn. They're going to rely on a lot of transfers to try and bridge that gap. Best foot forward this season, and yeah, man, I just don't see it. They just lose too much. And then you look at the schedule. The schedule really isn't all that great either. To have to try to go to like you said, Old Dominion and win, and try to beat Notre Dame, and try to beat Miami, and try to go to NC State. It doesn't bode well for me. And I think UNC too much to overcome. They're not the powerhouse that can overcome that kind of loss, all them losses. So yeah, I'm down on them as well, just like you this year, man.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of not be. There's just so much there that you lose, and it's hard to envision them coming in here and winning 7 games. I don't think they're a bowl team either. I think, they'll beat some of these bottom feeders, but other than that, it's going to be tough. Pittsburgh, another team that It's just the average and mediocrity of this conference is prudent, Ryan. I think we have to talk about that. There's one or two good teams in this conference, and I think there's one couple good teams, and then there's a lot of very average teams and bad teams. And that's why I think, for me, I can't really say that they're anywhere near what some people say as far as them being the best conference in the country. There's a lot of very average teams in this conference. One elite team. Pittsburgh, though, is not that elite team. Look, they're going to come back with, I think, a pretty good offense as always. They kind of, Ryan, shift in these transfer quarterbacks, and it always kind of seems to work a little bit. And Max Brown has kind of a resurgence, you would hope. I mean, he had trouble in USC, couldn't really beat Sam Darnold out. He comes to Pittsburgh with the ability to really set the record straight and win a job. And I think he'll be pretty good. I think he's got Yachi Quadri Henderson's a guy that you got to feel good about. Quadri Olison, a running back who comes in, had a lot of work last year with James Conner. I think he'll kind of slide into that starting spot and do just fine. This offense will be good. I think with this team, you're going to look to a lot of overs yet again. Defensively, they had some real problems in the passing game. I mean, 127th in the country. And, Ryan, I know you know, there's only about 128 teams. So if we do math correctly, there's one team worse, and that was Texas Tech. So it's going to be hard to make them much better. They had a pretty good run defense, but that pass defense had major problems, evident in that that Syracuse game, evident in the game against Miami. They get about 51 points. They're not good. They're really what they were last year. I think they'll score some points. They'll be a team that will be fun to watch, and they'll probably get to a bowl. I think they're probably a 6-7 win team, but if Max Brown's bad, they could be a really bad team, Ryan.
It's funny because I was high on Pitt last year, and if their defense would have a little bit and wasn't so awful, I mean, they could have really kind of made some noise. And let's see how the defense does this year, and if they're able to kind of take a step forward. Because if they are, I think their schedule allows them to have a decent year. I mean, they'll beat Youngstown State. Look, they got to go to Penn State. Will probably be a loss. And
Ryan, that's a very tough 2-3 game.
Penn State. But I'm talking about when you get into conference, Jeff. Right. I'm not talking about Penn State and Oklahoma State. It doesn't matter if they lose. They face Georgia Tech. They face Syracuse. They face NC State at home. They go to Duke. They play Virginia. They play North Carolina. I mean, they're set up to be able to win a lot of these winnable games because they don't have to face Clemson, they don't have to face Florida State, and they don't have to face Louisville. I mean, that's a gift right there that you don't have to face the big three in this conference. I mean, let's see how kind of things progress with Max Brown, and some of the other guys that they bring in. I think Narduzzi's bunch will kind of be able to win some of these games. What did you say their win total is? I'm not exactly sure. What is it?
It's 7. And look, I listen, Ryan. The problem I have with 7 is, on paper, I think they have 5 wins. The problem is, can you go to Syracuse and win? Which it's possible. Maybe make them 6. Can you go to Virginia Tech and win? Can you beat NC State? If they can do those, they can win 2 or 3. They'll probably get to 7. But again, a very good number here by books. I think this number is a little high for my liking, but I could see a situation where they'll win 7 games and you get your money back. Ryan, do you really think they win 8 games? Honestly, that's a.
I don't think they win. I don't think they win 8. I think 7 is their ceiling.
Yeah. So you're just, again, you're in that position where you're pushing, and with a future long term, there's just no value here. Very good number here, and I think what you do, hold your nose and get overs with this. I think that's kind of the growing theme with Pittsburgh. Virginia, we're not going to spend a lot of time in Virginia. They're the worst team in this conference, and I think 5 wins is being nice. We talked about Indiana, Ryan. They faced them in the second game of the season. That's going to be a loss, I think. Connecticut, they'll beat. William and Mary, they'll beat. There's 2. At Boise, they're going to lose. I think they could beat Duke, but I don't see it. They're not going to beat North Carolina, I don't think either. I think they're still worse than those teams. Can they beat Boston College? Maybe. I think they're a 3-4 win team. I don't think they're going to win 6 games to go bowling. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't quite understand if you're Mendenhall, other than a little more money, why you would go to this job. You're from the Utah area. You're just I don't really get it, but I guess that's his decision. Defense was poor last year. I would expect him to fix it, but I think it's too early in his time there. You lose Mizell. Bankert's a decent quarterback. I think he'll do some good things there, but you would agree this is definitely the worst team in the conference, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is a team that is going to be really bad and is going to be a 3. I have the number at 3 personally for me. I mean, if they get lucky and can squeak out a 4th grade, but yeah, they're terrible. They're very bad, and they're a team that that I would definitely go under. I would definitely take the under.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be one that I'm going to include. I mean, Mendenhall made comments saying that he underestimated the rebuild project. I'm not sure how. I mean, this team hasn't been good in a long time, and I'm not sure what you could underestimate there. The problem with this group is he has to go and put his culture in place, and he has to go and get players. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's got to be very difficult to recruit down in that area. I mean, you got Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and the NC schools. You got Louisville right around there. You're kind of impending almost on SEC countries. You get into Georgia and South Carolina. It's just such a tough area. I mean, and you look at what he's done recruiting-wise, Ryan. I mean, he goes out to California and gets an offensive lineman, goes up to Pittsburgh, Dallas, Florida. He's really kind of going out of his element to find recruits, and he's got to do it because it's hard to recruit in that Tidewater region and that area where Virginia is. And you look at both sides of the football this year, 115th in scoring offense, 99th in scoring defense. It's going to be very difficult. I think this one they messed up. Ryan, explain to me how Virginia is a 5-win team and BC is only a 4-win team. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No, absolutely
I
not.
think they're a little too bullish on UVA, and they're definitely going to be a team at the end that I'm going to mention. 2 more here, Ryan. Virginia Tech is in the Bs, and we talked about them. The big question for them is, can they go in the first game of the season into Landover, Maryland, where the Redskins play, and beat a pretty good West Virginia team? I'm going to be wondering because they have a new quarterback. West Virginia has a new quarterback with a lot of expectations around him. I think West Virginia's sky's the limit for it. But one thing I'm going to look at, Ryan, is the over in that game. I think West Virginia is going to score a ton of points and give up a ton of points as well. But overall, it's just a shame Jerron Hurd didn't get another year, or Gerard Evans, I'm sorry. Just because I think with him on this group, I think they could really, after another year, be much improved. They also lost Bucky Hodges as well, but Cam Phillips is back. Trevon McMillan's back. What are they going to have on this defense? I mean, Bud Foster's been there about 60 years. It seems like Fuente is bringing in his culture another year after. And you look at early on, I mean, West Virginia's a toss-up, but they're going to beat Delaware. They're going to beat East Carolina. I know I mentioned Old Dominion, but I think they can beat Old Dominion. Then you get Clemson. That could be a loss. Boston College is a win. I think there's plenty of wins on the schedule. I lump them into that Miami, Louisville, NC State rung. They're good enough to make a bowl game, but they're not good enough to win really anything else. And I got to tell you, Ryan, I don't think they're as good defensively as Miami. So for that reason, I just think they're a team you bet week to week. Maybe you look at some overs. But as far as anything long-term, they're not going back to the days of Michael Vick and Frank Beamer.
Yeah, you have to kind of see what they're going to get. Look, and it's funny because the top 2 teams in this side of the conference are Miami and Virginia Tech, and they're both so similar. They're both making their name on the defensive side of the ball. Where Virginia Tech, the linebacker in the secondary for Virginia Tech is going to be very good. Let's see what they get out of the front 4 if they can get a little bit of a pass rush and whatnot from the front 4. But the back end on Virginia Tech is very good. And the question is a quarterback. I mean, they're another team that could possibly start a freshman at quarterback. So let's see what they get from there. But yeah, Va Tech, I mean, let's see. We're going to learn a lot from them, like you said, week 1 against West Virginia. Have a couple cupcakes then. And then, with Clemson, they get Clemson at home, who, look, let's see how Clemson kind of progresses and whatnot. But the rest of the schedule isn't murderer's row by any means. So, yeah, let's kind of wait and kind of see with them. The defense is going to have to carry them early on and kind of let the offense kind of play catch up. That's what's going to have to happen, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But if it's me and you're looking at this side of the conference, I'm more inclined to take Miami just because I think their skill positions are a little better than Virginia Tech is right now. So I would give the edge to Miami. But, yeah, I think Va Tech's right there like a 2 in this side of the conference. How many wins are they going to have? I don't know. I mean, I think they're capable of winning 8. I mean, do you think they can win 9?
No, I don't. I think that for me, I think if they can win West Virginia, I think that's going to really play a lot into what they do, because that's going to be a fun game down in Landover, Maryland. Maybe a game that maybe I'll look to go to. That'd be a fun game to be at. With those two schools kind of battling it out. But Ryan, let's finish up with arguably the best team in the country, possibly Florida State. Last year, I'll admit, I was all over Florida State, Ryan. As you know, really thought this team would really kind of go where they wanted. Problem was they didn't. Francois had some issues early on. Travis Rudolph didn't have a great season, really. Dalvin Cook was as good as advertised, as always. But again, had some trouble at times giving up too many points. We saw it against, South Florida, and the Louisville game was fairly embarrassing. And I think after that, they kind of had some growing pains, but they won the final 5 games of the season, including that win against Michigan in the Orange Bowl, which, Ron, I know you remember. Tough loss there. Defensively, they're going to be sick. I mean, Brian Burns, DeMarcus Walker, so many options here. Josh Sweat. This is going to be a nasty defensive line. And you look at on the back end, Derwin James might be the best safety in the country. Ryan, would you agree with that?
About Derwin James? Yeah. I mean, look, this is a guy who missed pretty much all injury, and you return him to a defensive group that has 9 returning starters. I mean, that's staggering. I mean, you got a kid in Josh Sweat who is going to open eyes big time this year at the defensive end position. But yeah, Derwin James is a freak. I mean, he's really good. If you don't know about Derwin James and you weren't aware of him going into last season, you're going to be in for a surprise because he's a fantastic football player.
Yeah, and Francois got 1 year better. And, look, he had 3,300 yards, which was impressive as a redshirt freshman. He took, obviously, a large step late in the season. The question I have, and the one concern, what do you have at the skill positions? I mean, Nyquan Murray looked pretty good against Florida State, or against for Florida State against Miami, Michigan had 2 touchdowns in that game. Where's the drop-off, though, and how significant is it losing Dalvin Cook? Jock Patrick, Cam Akers, the freshmen come in. Can they develop a little 1-2 punch? I would think, just because they're Florida State and that's what they do. But, that's an interesting question mark early on. Ron, you look at that first game. I mean, what a matchup that's going to be. Florida State and Alabama, first game out of the chute. And, it's in Atlanta. It's down in kind of Bama country. It's really a decision, a national title kind of game early on. I mean, we don't see this very often. Going to be an amazing first game, isn't it?
Yeah, Jeff, this game is, you can't, just as a college football fan, you can't ask for anything better. This is fantastic. Bama versus versus Florida State, which a lot of people think could be like you said, a national championship preview, and even whoever loses could still get to the national championship. That would be interesting in itself. But yeah, I mean, and this is a situation where Alabama doesn't really lose these kind of games, these opening night games. I mean, you remember, I mean, they usually win these games. They usually win them big. I mean, they killed USC last year. I remember a few years ago they pounded Michigan. I mean, these are games that they just don't lose. So this is definitely going to be interesting. And with Florida State, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The skill position is kind of the as well in the trenches. I mean, Francois took a beating in some of them games last year. I mean, an absolute beating. Credit to him for battling through it. But I mean, I remember he got beat up against Miami. He got beat up against Louisville. I mean, he got beat up against some of them games, even against Michigan, a game they found a way to win. Still took a beating. I remember a shot from Taco Charlton he took. So, and for me too, another reason I'm kind of like on the fence with how good can they be is the schedule, Jeff. I mean, they have some really tough games. I mean, you mentioned Bama to start the year. They got to go to Clemson. They got to go to the Swamp against Florida. Who knows what they're going to be? It's a rivalry game. Non-conference slate against Auburn, and then go to Blacksburg and play Virginia Tech, which is a tough place to play. So doing them any favors. So it's definitely going to be interesting. This is definitely I mean, how many wins do you think you see in there? I mean, how many wins do you think you see in that schedule?
Well, let me look here. I mean, they're 7.5-point underdogs against Alabama.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm inclined to take the points in that game. But I'll be honest. I think they're going to beat Alabama. I do. I think they're really
win. Okay. Wow.
I think they're going to beat Alabama. I really do. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's one game, though, that they're going to win. I just have a feeling Francois is going to turn into a Deshaun Watson type of player. I really do. UL Monroe's a win. They'll beat Miami at home. They'll beat NC State at home. They'll beat Wake. They'll beat Duke. They'll beat Louisville. Ryan, I think they're going to run the table, to be honest. I mean, where's the loss in that schedule other than Alabama? I mean, maybe at Florida.
At Clemson's tough, and at Florida, yeah, I mean, those are the kind
of
but if they have tougher games as you get into the season. But if they can get by Alabama, anything's possible.
I think it's going to be a special season. I mean, I think, especially if they're looking at an undefeated season, they're going to put the wood to Florida. And again, Ryan, it's that big question. It can be all or nothing for Florida State pretty quickly, as was last year. I mean, after they lose to Louisville, the dream was pretty much gone for me, at least, just because I had a future on them. But let's quickly just look at Florida State's national title odds, because for me, I am going to have a future on that. 8.25 to 1. I think it's pretty good odds. And look, I mean, again, I don't think you're going to get a better number than that. And Ryan, I mean, let's be real. I'm basically getting plus 825 right out of the window against Alabama, aren't I? Because if they win that game, those odds are going to shrink significantly. And I'm really just hoping that they can run the table the rest of it. I'm going to get into the Final Four. And then I'm kind of really just free rolling at that point.
But if they lose to Alabama, all's not lost. I mean, you see that Alabama, where everyone respects. I mean, it's not the end of the world if they lose that game, and then they can beat Florida and beat Clemson and then win the other games. So
I'm really I'm free rolling in a way. I mean, I have the real ability to win that game and really set myself up. But hey, if I don't, I'm still very much alive because we're in the ACC and we have plenty of ways to get the job done. So, exactly. I mean, you look at the play in the Year's 4. I mean, they're minus 145, so it's better than even money that they're going to get into there. And I don't see any reason to think they won't. I think they're a complete lock to win this conference. I don't think anyone is going to derail them. If it's going to be anyone, I think it's some random team. But Ron, do you see anyone here that is going to dethrone them?
I think they're set up. I think they're set up beautifully. I mean, really, the only team that really challenges them, in my opinion, is Clemson. But we talked about them probably taking a step back. And then, I mean, there's not a team like look, if they get to the ACC title game, there's not a team in that Coastal Division that's going to beat them. I mean, there's not. I mean, they're better, and they're significantly better than Miami, Virginia Tech, and then the rest of the teams we talked about. So yeah, I think this is one of the better odds and chances for a team to win their conference, which is Florida State, barring some sort of crazy injury, of course.
And I'll tell you what, if Francois can have a special game against Alabama, throw his name into the hat, Ryan. 21-1, throw his name into the hat.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm interested. That first game is going to be great. I mean, it's going to be a great first weekend. And again, I mean, I think the growing theme with the ACC is a lot of mediocrity, Ryan. Not a lot of teams here that, other than Florida State, that you're too excited about. Ryan, great stuff as always. Before we go, we'll get a couple picks from you. But first, I'll throw a couple of mine out there. I'm going to go with the Florida State Seminoles at 8.25 to 1 to win the national title. I'm also going to go with what is their win total here? I didn't even write it down. But whatever it is, I'm going over. I think they win all their games this year, to be honest. I am going to throw a small play in on Francois at 20-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. And several win totals I'm looking at. I'm going to go under 5, Virginia. I'm going to go over 4, Boston College. I'm also going to go under 7, UNC. And I'm going to go over 7.5, North Carolina State. Watch out for the Wolfpack, Ryan. Watch out for the Wolfpack. Ryan, any from you today?
Yeah, love NC State, like we talked about. They're definitely my sleeper team in this conference, and I think you would agree. Obviously, you just said. So, yeah, NC State's a team I'm really high on. Very similar to Northwestern, like we talked about. Very, very low on – I mean, you look at some of the bottom half teams. I mean, I'm very low on Virginia. I'm very low on Duke. I don't think either one of them teams gets remotely close to 5 wins. And then when you talk about some of the bigger guys, I think Clemson does take that slight step back. I think they're going to – I think a lot of national people think 10 wins, 2 losses. I'm actually going to give them a third in there. I think they slip up somewhere, probably like NC State, like we talked about. And I just think that it's Florida State's conference to lose, really. I mean, if they can stay healthy and they get something from Cam Akers, a freshman running back coming in who's a stud. I mean, I follow recruiting religiously. He's one of the better running backs to come along in some time, and that was a great win by them on the recruiting trail. So, yeah, I'm really high on them. And then with that, man, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't get excited about Miami. I don't get excited about Virginia Tech, and I certainly don't get excited about Pittsburgh and the rest of those teams. So it's kind of a shame. This conference is very similar to the Big Ten. You got one side that's really stacked, and you got the other side that's just kind of
it's a shame
and really doesn't have a chance to win the championship.
It's definitely a shame. I wish NC State was in the Coastal because I would totally pick them. They kind of remind me of Northwestern a little bit in that group. But, yeah, it sucks. I mean, they're definitely going to be a team ATS that you're going to want to look forward to. But that concludes, Ryan, our breakdown here. Looking forward to another great season of ACC football. The next conference I'll break down is Conference USA here. I'm probably going to take a couple days off here. It's my birthday tomorrow, Ryan, as you know.
It is, yep. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So, yes, thank you again, Ryan. Good stuff as always. I'm sure we'll talk to you very soon. I have the feeling you're not going to be that interested in the Conference USA, but, again, we're breaking down everyone. I do, Ryan, have to make a video here at some point for these FCS independents. There are a couple in there that I have to do, which I'll do. But, Ryan, thanks again for coming on, man. I'm going to end the broadcast. Obviously, end the show with this. If you like the show, please hit like, subscribe, share with your friends. I'm on SBR Forum pretty much every day doing baseball, soccer, all sorts of things. Hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. I'm the big man on campus. We'll see you next time here on the college football tournament or college football preview shows as we do every week here. Bye-bye.